So I made a mistake. I wanted to make homemade vegan hazelnut spread. So I looked at my grocery store for hazelnuts. Couldn't find any. While I was traveling, we went to this really cute local grocery store and I said, you know what? They're gonna have hazelnuts. And they did, right? So I bought 2 pounds worth of hazelnuts. The only problem is these hazelnuts are not shelled, meaning that I now have to shell 2 pounds worth of hazelnuts by hand because I went out and bought a nutcracker because I didn't have one before this. So I'm gonna shell these hazelnuts and then I'm gonna make some really tasty vegan food out of them. Follow along as I go through this process with me. When I got started, I ran into some problems. But after some trial and error, I eventually got the hang of it. I used a towel to make sure that the shards of shell wouldn't fly everywhere, and it helped reduce my mess, and I got into a rhythm. And then I just had to, shell 2 pounds of hazelnuts. And finally, I had 2 cups of hazelnuts. Now it's time to roast them. I'll roast them for about 10 minutes at 350 degrees in the oven. I did not expect it, but these honestly smell so good. Like, they smell like caramel. Now it's time to get the peels off. You rub them with a towel to get the peels off. But I had some issues. Online, it says that if you put the hazelnuts in a baking soda bath for about 10 minutes, the peels will come off really easy. This unfortunately was really messy and super tedious and kind of slimy. As you can see, the water also turns this really scary color, which is completely normal, but kind of spooky. So finally, I got all of the peels off and my hazelnuts were ready for the next step. So Nutella is really just hazelnut butter, like almond butter or peanut butter. So I was trying to blend the hazelnuts in my blender with a little bit of coconut oil, but for some reason I just couldn't get the right consistency. The next ingredients is cocoa to give it that really awesome chocolate flavor that we all love so much. And then of course adding in sugar as well to make it nice and sweet. But this is where things really started to go wrong. And I should have known, because everybody who was making Nutella at home was using a food processor. But I don't have a food processor. I only have my little blender. And it was really trying so hard. So I tried to add some melted vegan chocolate to maybe help smooth things out and give it some more moisture. But it was just so thick and dry and it would not blend together. It would not get creamy the way Nutella is supposed to. I kept adding more chocolate, more oil, and it did not help the texture. Ultimately, I went out and bought a food processor. But unfortunately, I had already ruined the texture by adding so much oil and chocolate to it, so I had to ultimately discard this batch. So I cried and came back the next day, an even stronger woman, and roasted some more hazelnuts that I shelled by hand and pushed off all of the shells really firmly, so this time I didn't have to do any boiling, and I already felt so much better about this batch. They went straight into the food processor. I was just kind of dusting off any of the extra shell and peel that was on them, and then I was gonna blend the heck out of these. And the key here, right, this is where I messed up last time, is that you have to blend them until they start to release their natural oils. Because that's how peanut butter is made. It's from its natural oil in the nut that is released when it's cut into those itty bitty pieces. I made sure to push it down really frequently so it wouldn't get jammed or smushed into one section, and I honestly blended these things for probably about 6 to 7 minutes. Now go ahead and watch and you'll slowly see the texture start to change. It's gonna clump up, it's gonna get really thick, and this is where my blender just couldn't handle it, but the food processor does an amazing job. And then it goes from clumps to smooth, and then we gotta keep going even after it starts to get smooth because you need it to get oily. Now that the natural oils were released, I could go ahead and add in a little bit extra coconut oil. Now it's finally time to add the cocoa powder, just like I did last time, but this time I made sure that the consistency of the hazelnut butter was correct. So now you can see it's really blending in really nicely, and then after this I'm gonna go ahead and add in the sugar as well. And after literal blood, sweat, and tears, my vegan homemade hazelnut spread, aka Nutella, was finally ready, and it was so beautiful and delicious. I was so inspired by how this turned out that I wanted to make some vegan French toast and put my vegan Nutella on top. So I'm going in here with some plant-based milk. I'm using banana milk here, and then I'm making a flaxseed slurry. So I'm adding in flaxseed meal, and then I'm gonna whisk that together. It's gonna thicken up the mix, and that's going to be our base for our French toast mixture. Now that this mixture has had a chance to set around 5 minutes, I'm gonna pour it into a big bowl so that way I can toss in my bread, and then I'm gonna wanna get it only a little bit wet on each side because I don't want it to be too soggy. So just a couple seconds each side, I'm kind of poking it around, and then you want to kind of shake off the extra almost so that way again it's not too soggy, and then it's gonna go straight into a frying pan over medium-high heat, and you'll roast it for a couple minutes on each side in the frying pan, and then it'll be all ready to go. And now it's time to top it off. I'm starting with a little bit of plain vegan yogurt, and then after that I'm adding in all of my hazelnut spread, and then a little bit more hazelnut spread. Finally, I'm adding in some sliced banana and some fresh chopped roasted hazelnuts. I served it with just a little bit more maple syrup, and then I enjoyed one of the most delicious breakfasts ever. Now come with me as I make some dinner using, you guessed it, hazelnuts. First off, I'm chopping up this parsnip, which if you can't find a parsnip, you could substitute carrot. Then I'm preparing leeks. You want to remove all of those big green leaves. You could save them and use them to make vegetable broth if you want. Leeks, make sure you wash them really well because they have dirt in them often. I'm actually also going to chop up an apple, make sure to get those seeds out. And then I have my, of course, roasted hazelnuts. I'm going to chop up a potato. I really don't care that much about the peels, so I leave them on. Then everything goes into the bottom of my cast iron pan, starting with the parsnips. Then after that, we'll put in the potato as well, the leek, the apple, and as well as some shallot to give it that nice onion flavor. And our goal with sauteing everything here in the bottom of the Dutch oven is to start to soften it because we're gonna be making a really creamy hazelnut soup. And we want our veggies to be really soft so that way there's no tough parts when we're eating our creamy soup. Once those veggies have softened a little bit, we're gonna add in our chopped hazelnuts. Then after that, we're gonna give it the base flavor of nutmeg. We want 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, which I know seems like a lot, but it's gonna be lost in all of those other flavors and aromatics. We're adding in the broth here along with some rosemary, thyme, and bay leaf. Once that's done boiling and our veggies are completely soft, go ahead and remove the herbs. And now it is going to be time to go in and blend it to get that creamy consistency. So here you'll see that I'm using an immersion blender. You got to be really careful with this because you don't want to splash yourself with the hot soup. I probably should have let it cool off just a little bit more, but I was impatient and kind of hungry. Add in some nutritional yeast for a cheesiness, and then my favorite cashew cream, which I'll make sure the recipe for is in the description below. Finally, mix it all up until it has the perfect smooth consistency. Oh, look at that cream, so good. And you want it, again, to be really smooth. And now we're ready for the final taste test. Serve it up in a bowl of your choice, and I hope you enjoy.